comment.
Canada will be ready.
Madam Speaker, the Liberals spent hundreds of millions of dollars on Canadian production of the COVID-19 vaccine. In August, they announced that Canada would be able to make 250,000 doses by November. Well, it's now the end of November, and the Prime Minister now says that we don't have any domestic production capacity. So the reality is that because of Liberal failures, Canada will be getting the vaccine after 1/3 of the world's population. What happened?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And when this pandemic began, Canadians understood that we did not have significant biomanufacturing capacity, and that was certainly not helped by the previous anti-science Conservative government. But we've made significant investments both prior to the pandemic and now during the pandemic to augment our biomanufacturing capacity, to enable life sciences investments at ISED. We're continuing to do the right things, make the right investments, and our biomanufacturing capacity is increasing thanks to that investment.
The Honourable Member for Edmonton Millwood.
Madam Speaker, just having a contract for a vaccine is very different than actually knowing when most Canadians will receive that vaccine. What we do know is that the Americans will be vaccinating 20 million of their population in December and 30 million in January. So by the middle of January, the U.S. will have vaccinated the entire population of Canada, the equivalent. So I'm asking you again, why is Canada at the back of the line when it comes to the COVID-19 vaccine?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Madam Speaker, from the outset, we have clearly recognized the unparalleled undertaking of procuring vaccines for Canadians and the challenges that come with it. We've been working around the clock with our officials, with provinces since May on a vaccine distribution system, and we will continue to deliver the strongest possible response to COVID-19. We've said it in this chamber, we've said it in committee, we've said it to the media and the public, and are happy to repeat again. We'll be receiving vaccines in the first quarter of 2021. We're confident in our position. Canadians can be very proud of the position that Canada is in. When a vaccine is ready, Canada.
L'honorable député de Saint-Jean.
The Honourable Member for Saint-Jean. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Even the Liberals have admitted it. They are using the Liberalist partisan tool to filter judicial appointments in order to ascertain the political affiliation of candidates. According to the Journal de Montréal and Radio-Canada, in an in-camera vote, the Liberals prevented a committee inquiry on partisan judicial appointments. Madam Speaker, the Minister of Justice keeps telling us that the appointment process is open and transparent. If that's really true, why did the Liberals have to secretly vote to prevent us from studying it? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. Madam Speaker, we have created an open and transparent appointment system. In 2016, we introduced essential reforms, such as the reform of the advisory committee. And since then, we have appointed more than 400 exceptional jurists. The judges named under this new procedure since 2016, 5% identify as members of the LGBTQ2 community, 3% are Indigenous, and 1% are living with a disability. It is a very diverse process. The Honourable Member. Madam Speaker, if the process is really as good as the Minister is saying, he shouldn't be afraid of our questions. But according to the media, the Liberals prevented the committee from studying the matter. And once again, with the support of the NDP, in secret. What did they offer the NDP to help stifle this scandal? Is it their way of returning the favour for having extended the wage subsidy for political parties? Or are we going to see new Democratic judges? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. Madam Speaker, I will quote a letter from the Canadian Bar Association. According to the association, the government has not interfered in the process to favour Liberals, and the process has not led to the appointment of candidates who are not worthy of holding these positions. This is a merit-based process that reflects the diversity of Canada. The best candidates must be identified. Madam Speaker, since 2016, our government has made essential reforms and created an open and transparent process.
Madam Speaker,
This week, the Canadian Human Rights Tribunal ordered this government to apply Jordan's principle to non-status First Nations children living off reserve who are recognized by their community. This government has already received 9 non-compliance orders from the tribunal regarding the racist treatment of Indigenous children in care. Will the minister please commit today to not appeal this decision? And will the government do this, or will they continue to fight Indigenous kids in court?
Honourable Minister for Indigenous Services.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and we welcome the order of the Canadian Human Rights Tribunal. I would note for the member opposite that our department is currently reviewing and revising what was said in the order, but we are looking forward to the implementation of this definition that expands the definition of First Nations children, which is so important to closing the socioeconomic gaps between non-Indigenous and Indigenous children. I would note for the member opposite that since 2016 we have provided 750,000 supports behind every support as an Indigenous child, as well as the budget investments of $1.2 billion in 2019 to close that gap that we continue to close and implement the orders. Thank you, Madam.
L'honorable député de Rosemont.
The honourable member for Rosemont-la-Petite-Patrie. Madam Speaker, the Liberals are great at making nice speeches, but they're not so good at helping their constituents. In fact, the Liberals aren't even answering constituents' calls. People have questions. They're getting vague answers, and they are tired of waiting for hours on the phone to get information. Will the Liberals invest resources in order to answer people's questions, or at the very least give parliamentarians a reliable tool to answer questions from constituents?
L'honorable secrétaire parlementaire.
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Madam Speaker, and I can appreciate the member's question, and the government does the best it can at providing the responses that are necessary in order to try to accommodate the type of answers that members are looking for. I know the member's not necessarily specifically putting a question to a specific department, but that, unfortunately, that's the best I can do for an answer.
The honourable member for Calgary-Nose Hill.
Madam Speaker, this week we found out that the delivery of the Pfizer vaccine will be, according to the minister, in a just-in-time delivery method. This vaccine needs to be stored below -70 Celsius, and this means that our capacity to give that vaccine to Canadians depends on our capacity to store it. So by April 1st, 2021, how many doses of the Pfizer vaccine will Canada be able to receive from the company per week?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Madam Speaker, what we've been repeatedly saying is that we've been working with the provinces for very many months now, in fact since May, day and night. The best people in the Government of Canada are working on this, the best people right across this country, and I want to take the opportunity, Madam Speaker, to applaud the hard-working and dedicated public servants that are putting in place among the world's most robust vaccine logistics and distribution systems that will obviously conform to the requirements of specific vaccines, and Canada will be ready when those vaccines are ready, Madam Speaker.
The honourable member for Calgary-Nose Hill.
The government signed a contract with a company called CanSino regarding a COVID vaccine in early May. Contracts with the leading vaccine candidates weren't signed until months later. The CanSino deal fell apart on August 26th. So for the period between May 12th, when the deal was announced, and August 26th, was the Minister of Public Safety ever briefed by CSIS or the RCMP about potential problems with Canada signing a deal with CanSino for a COVID vaccine?
The Honourable Minister of Public Safety.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. And although I can't speak to the specifics of any advice given by the national security establishment in this or any other case, let me assure the member opposite that the National Security Services of Canada, CSIS and CSE, are very, very conscientious and comprehensive in the advice that they give to government, and we pay a great deal of attention to their advice. Thank you.
The Honourable member for Calgary-Nose Hill.
Well, we know that Canadians won't receive the COVID vaccine until months after other countries have. This will cost lives and jobs. The government's decision to focus on a deal with CanSino, which may have been signed due to diplomatic priorities as opposed to health priorities, and may have fallen apart due to diplomatic reprisal or advice from CSIS and the RCMP, did that decision have any role to play in why Canadians are so far behind in receiving doses of vaccines from other companies?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Yeah, quite the contrary, Madam Speaker. Canada is in a very privileged position with a diversified portfolio of vaccine candidates. We look forward to the regulatory approval of all of those. In fact, we know that of the first three who've received encouraging news, Canada has arrangements with all three of those vaccine candidates. Canada compares very favorably. For example, the Moderna vaccine, we were there among the first in the world, in front of the UK, for example. So Canada is in a very good position. When vaccines are ready, Madam Speaker, Canada will be ready.
L'honorable député.
Madam Speaker, it's been a week since the government announced a new trade deal between Canada and the United Kingdom, and yet we still have few details. We've learned this government failed to consult in any meaningful way with businesses and labor over the entire 3 years they were apparently working on this deal. It's disappointing, it's top-down, and it is certainly a missed opportunity. Why did the minister not feel it was important to reach out and hear from businesses and labor organizations?
L'honorable secrétaire parlementaire.
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Speaker, when it comes to defending the interests of Canadians, we ensured that the views and the voices of all Canadians were heard. The new trade continuity agreement with the United Kingdom is not a comprehensive new trade agreement. It is a rollover, essentially, of CETA. CETA, for which we negotiated during 7 years and consulted extensively with all stakeholders during that time. As we have always done, we will continue to engage with Canadian businesses, our labor, key stakeholders on negotiating the full and comprehensive trade agreement with the UK that is upcoming in the next year, Madam Speaker.
L'honorable.
The Honourable Member for Mégantic-L'Érable. Madam Speaker, this Liberal government says that it wants to protect supply management, but it has made unprecedented concessions in the CUSMA agreement. In 2019, the Agriculture Minister said that there would be a compensation plan over 8 years. They sent a check in the election year, but for the 7 other years, still nothing for dairy producers, and egg and poultry producers and processors still haven't received anything. Now Canada is starting negotiations with the UK. Will the Prime Minister commit to not making more concessions when it comes to the supply managed sector? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. Thank you, Madam Speaker. The interpreter regrets, but two people are talking at once. Let me be very clear to all our dairy producers. There is not a single ounce of more cheese, not a single ounce of cheese beyond what is already being accepted is going to enter Canada due to the agreement with the UK. We will support the supply offered sector for our producers, Madam Speaker, and we will be there for Quebecers and Canadians throughout the entire country. Thank you very much.
For Kelowna Lake Country.
The Minister of International Trade recently spoke about an agreement signed with Australia on wine excise taxes, saying she was pleased that we came to an agreement. This agreement will be devastating to Canadian domestic wineries, as it gave Australia basically what they wanted, which is Canadian wineries paying excise tax. Can the minister please explain what is so pleasing about putting thousands of Canadian jobs at risk and having domestic Canadian wineries pay $40 million in new taxes?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Madam Speaker, I'd like to assure the member opposite that our government understands the tremendous value that the wine industry brings to Canada and the contribution that the sector brings to our reputation as a world-class agricultural producer. Our government will continue to stand up for Canadian workers and defend the interests of our Canadian wine industry, and we are working closely with provinces on this issue and will continue to stand up for Canadian workers and our wine industry.
The Honourable Member for Niagara Falls.
Madam Speaker, last week, the Minister of Small Business and International Trade's lack of a response to my question on our important grape and wine sector spoke volumes about her government's commitment to this vital sector. It is our understanding stakeholders in the Canadian wine and industry have been meeting with senior government officials to discuss trade compliance solutions to support the grape and wine industry after the excise tax exemption ends in 2020. Madam Speaker, is the government any closer to determining a solution to the problem they created in the first place?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Madam Speaker, as the member opposite has pointed out himself, we are working hand in hand with our wine industry, with our hardworking Canadian wine producers in order to find a solution to this issue. We are absolutely intent on continuing to defend our Canadian wine industry, and we will continue to work with all members across the aisle who are interested on this issue in order to find a resolution.
The Honourable Member for Victoria.
Madam Speaker, the government must support small businesses that are falling through the cracks. Bear and Joey, a new restaurant in my riding, is facing the exact same challenges as other small businesses, but they had the bad luck of opening during a global pandemic. After years of planning and pouring their life savings into developing their business, they don't qualify for wage or rent subsidies. When will this government give startups and all small businesses the help they need to survive and stop leaving businesses like Bear and Joey to face this pandemic on their own?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Madam Speaker, I'd like to thank the member opposite for this question. As she raised herself, our new rent subsidy and our wage subsidy legislation has passed. Now we are able to supply up to 90% of a subsidy on commercial rent. With respect to new businesses and startups, such as the one in her riding, I would direct the member to the Regional Relief and Recovery Fund, which is there in order to make sure that no business and no entrepreneur in this country is left behind.
The Honourable Member for Courtenay Albany.
Madam Speaker, according to the Comox Valley Chamber of Commerce, 30% of small businesses are in desperate need of childcare. Having universal, affordable and accessible childcare has never been so important to Canadian families, particularly to women struggling with the second wave of the pandemic. With the economic update on Monday, the Liberals must step up and partner with BC and other provinces to make historic investments in childcare that will allow Canadian parents to rejoin the workforce. After decades of broken promises, will the Liberals finally commit to making universal, affordable childcare?
Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I actually appreciate the honourable member's question. It is something that is a priority for us. We are on track to continue to invest over $7.5 billion. We've created over 40,000 affordable childcare spaces since coming into office. We are also committed to creating 250,000 before and after school spaces. And in the speech from the throne, the honourable member has noted, obviously, that we are committed to creating a national system of early learning and childcare that's affordable and accessible to all parents in Canada.
Madam Speaker, billions of dollars have been laundered into this country, leaving in its wake thousands of devastated families, killing so many sons and daughters and brothers and sisters from spiking opioid deaths. Now, the BC Attorney General has pointed the finger at this government for its lack of care and resources. He said, and I quote, "There has been no change or increase to police officers dedicated to anti-money laundering criminal investigations in the province," end quote. Will the minister admit that by doing nothing, he's effectively letting criminals off the hook, or is he going to continue to point the finger at others for his government's failures?
The Honourable Minister.
Madam Speaker, I'd like to thank the member opposite for a very important question. And after, quite frankly, the scorched earth approach of the Harper Conservatives closing down money laundering, let me advise the member what we in fact have done. And over the last 2 years alone, Madam Speaker, we've invested over $300 million in the RCMP, FinTrack, and CRA. We've announced the establishment of a public safety action coordination enforcement team. And this month alone, Madam Speaker, the RCMP has further approved for $98 million for the creation to replace the offices closed by the Conservatives with new integrated money laundering investigative teams, which will add...
The Honourable Member for Mission, Matsqui, Fraser Canyon.
Madam Speaker, report after official report continue to show that BC and Canada have a serious money laundering problem. A year and a half ago, the Liberals announced more RCMP support to combat this crime. But BC's Attorney General just stated, and I quote, "I find this profoundly unfortunate. There has been no change or an increase in police officers dedicated to anti-money laundering criminal investigations in the province. This is unacceptable. How many new officers will BC receive and when? British Columbians want answers."
Well, Minister.
Madam Speaker, it is unacceptable, and unfortunately what the member has just said is also incorrect. As I've said, we have invested $300 million in the RCMP, FinTrack, and CRA. We've announced the establishment, and the work is underway of the Public Safety Action Coordination Enforcement Teams. The CBSA Center of Expertise, as well as amendments to the Criminal Code, have taken place. And this month, Madam Speaker, the RCMP has approved the spending of $98 million towards the creation of new integrated money laundering investigative teams, adding additional officers in Alberta, Ontario, BC, and Quebec. And, Madam Speaker, the RCMP has launched the Counter Illicit Finance Alliance.
The honourable member for Battle River Crowfoot.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Rural crime is a huge issue in my riding. There was a bank robbery in Czar, police impersonators on Highway 41, and even a store in Amisk owned by the mayor being driven into and burglarized. And these are just a few examples. Things were bad before COVID, and it has only gotten worse since. The Liberals' only response to date is to dismiss. When will the minister and this government stop targeting law-abiding firearms owners, stop blaming Stephen Harper, and actually take rural crime seriously?
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, and let me assure the member opposite that we in fact do take this very seriously, and in fact we've made substantial amounts of money, $327 million, available to the provinces and territories right across this country, including in the member's province. I've spoken recently to the provincial minister responsible, and I've asked her very clearly that she must tell the people of her province how that they have spent and invested that money. But I can also tell you, Madam Speaker, that, for example, in Saskatchewan, the Attorney General has said that they are on the right track in dealing with rural crime, and they've seen a 10% reduction. Similar data out of Alberta also shows that progress, significant progress.
The honourable member for Fundy Royal.
Madam Speaker, with it being victims and survivors of crime.
You're on mute. I'm sorry.
What a shame. We want to hear that. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, with it being Victims and Survivors of Crime Week, Canadians were outraged to read a decision yesterday that a provincial court struck down the law that would allow judges to hand out consecutive life sentences to the country's cruelest murderers. If the government does not defend the law, it will have significant consequences across Canada. The minister failed to defend his government's previous criminal code amendments. Will he stand up for victims and their families by defending the law now?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Madam Speaker, as I said earlier on in question period, this decision is going to rekindle a great deal of hurt and anger among those who are affected by this terrible crime, including the Muslim Canadian community, of which I count myself a member. The victims, their families, their friends, the people in Quebec and across this country. There are important questions raised by this judgment. We will take the necessary time to fully examine it. Our thoughts are focused with the families and the survivors. We have stood them and with the Muslim Canadian community throughout this awful tragedy, and we will continue to do so.
The Honourable Member for Rimouski, Nejet-Témiscouata-Les-Basques. Madam Speaker, few industries have suffered from COVID as much as tourism. Tourism, restaurants, events, hotels. These are businesses that, for the most part, are not even allowed to open according to public health. Yet in the 8th month of pandemic, they're still waiting for help from the federal government. The Minister of Economic Development has been telling us for 8 months that tourism is important. Well, that should show. On Monday, the government delivers its economic update. Is the government going to finally offer specific programs for tourism? The Parliamentary Secretary.
Madam Speaker, thank you very much for the question from the member. The minister has put in place the Regional Recovery and Relief Fund, a $1.5 billion fund, which is enabling many businesses, including those working in the hospitality industry, to get the help they need. and in particular in Quebec, it has been very effective. I would invite the member, if they have any particular cases, to contact myself or the other parliamentary secretary so we can work on a solution together. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Rimouski-Nejet-Témiscouat-Basque. Madam Speaker, it's quite something that federal assistance doesn't meet the needs of the industries that are hardest hit by COVID. We're talking about an industry that was paralyzed back in the spring, it's paralyzed today, and is now learning that next summer will be just as difficult because Ottawa wasn't able to get the COVID vaccine in time. The economic update is on Monday. It's the last chance for many companies in Quebec. Will the government finally announce a specific targeted tourism strategy? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. And I can tell you that we have been there from the get-go for the tourism industry through our wage subsidy, which has been extended into next year, through our relief as it relates to rent, as well as the Regional Relief and Recovery Fund, a $1.5 billion fund that's there for the tourism industry.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. For months, the Liberals left my private member's bill to legalize single-event sports betting in limbo while they shut down Parliament. At that time, it simply wasn't a priority. Well, now the government has brought forward their own legislation on this matter. The fact is, tourism, gaming, and sports sectors need the help right now. Will the government commit today to bring this bill for debate, a vote, without further delay?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Madam Speaker, our government is committed to ensuring that those who engage in gambling can do so in a safe and regulated way. The current laws prohibiting betting on single-event sport betting allowed organized crime to profit and created economic disparities for our communities. That's why we are proposing changes to the legislation that has been tabled to allow the provinces and territories to regulate this and Canadian communities to benefit from the revenues. These changes will also bring about additional transparency to support responsible gambling and provide assistance to those in need of support. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Portneuf-Jacques-Cartier. Madam Speaker, a father in my riding who meets all the criteria for employment insurance has to fight for it. You know why? Because he's a Quebecer, he took parental leave, and he has applied for the Emergency Employment Insurance Program, which he's entitled to, and the system can't manage it. Only Quebec parents are facing this prejudice. The Liberal government has again forgotten Quebecers. Madam Speaker, when will the Minister resolve this problem in the system, and more importantly, when will the Liberal government show some respect for Quebecers?
The brain is only a receiver. In the universe, there is a core from which we obtain knowledge, strength, and inspiration. Nikola Tesla.